Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Tasha Coleman, and I am the program coordinator for the Learning Assistant Program at the Rutgers Learning Centers. I am here with a group of my students, and we are going to share and discuss experiences in online classes. So, if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, we can start with Blessing.
Hello, my name is Blessing. I'm from the School of Nursing. I'm in my sophomore year and graduating in 2025.
Catherine.
Hello, my name is Catherine Bennett, and I am currently a grad student in the School of Engineering studying biomedical engineering, and I graduate in 2023.
Nicole.
Hi, my name is Nicole Almost. I'm in the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, and I graduate in 2024.
Camilo.
Hi, my name is Camilo Jose Minier, and I am in the School of Arts and Sciences studying cell biology and neuroscience, and I graduate this year, actually.
And Kevin.
Hello, my name is Kevin Doe. I am in the School of Communication and Information, and I'm graduating 2025.
Thank you, guys. So we're going to jump right in and ask you guys a few questions. So we broke these down into categories. Our first category is motivation. And we are going to discuss what teaching strategies motivate students to engage in online learning. The first question is, what do you think motivates you to engage in your online course? And what are you basing that on?
I could start. One thing that motivates me is when we're able to interact with the other students through discussion groups. I'm basing this off of previous experience in breakout rooms with other students.
I think I can piggyback off of that. One of the things that I noticed that I really enjoyed about some of these classes is that, especially the ones that have an async component to them, and then they have a synchronous component with them online, where we would learn on asynchronous formats, the lecture, the knowledge. In the synchronous formats, we can introduce nuances, new perspectives, and yeah, that really motivates me in a way that we just engage with each other in a way that is both productive on both ends.
Something that motivates me is getting constant feedback from the teacher. Like I've had classes where when we submit assignments, they give like thorough comments on our assignments, and also like are pretty engaged in like giving out weekly or bi-weekly announcements instead of like pre-made announcements about the class. Like they engage and try to get feedback from the class constantly.
Something that motivates me with online courses is that some of the tools that we don't really get to use in in-person classes, like polls, for example, I think seeing seeing the results of the polls really gives me a lot of feedback about the class, maybe where I stand in the class. It's just really engaging to have some of those tools like polls.
I also agree with the polls. I think it helps students especially students who are shy, they could interact and answer the questions without having the pressure of speaking in front of a big group of people.
I agree with you guys in a format that we do live in the 21st century, so technology is kind of our entire basis of existence now. And we always have a smartphone with us. We always have our computers with us, and the online format that kind of has been introduced within the past decade or two in like higher academia has just proven to be very successful for me. I really enjoy it. It motivates me. It's I can do it in my room. So that's something that I really enjoy, and of course the technological advances that we have.
Catherine, do you have a different perspective from the grad school side of things?
So, the online semesters that we were all online because of the pandemic, I was actually an undergrad. back then, but I do still have some online classes as a graduate student, and it's definitely a little different because the subject material is a lot more difficult when you're in grad school because you're learning more advanced topics and you're learning more like technologically advanced things. And I would admit that, especially from an engineering perspective, it can be difficult to kind of translate those um, kinds of topics online because you're so used to seeing a professor like standing in front of a board and writing on it, like whether it's equations or equipment descriptions, things like that. And initially, I did find it a little difficult because of that transition online, because I do still have some classes that are online in grad school. But I think that, you know, some of the technology that we have available to us right now, like the Zoom whiteboards where the professors can like directly just write on there, and class discussions and polls, as was mentioned before, I think those have really helped make that transition a lot easier.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. What, if anything, has your instructor done to motivate you in an online course?
I think I can start with that. Something that I really enjoy that further motivates me, and the motives are, I think on the online format, they can also, I know going back to what we talked about before, the nuances, they can provide additional sources that, the professors do put on there. And some of them, if I'm really interested on the topic, I will further delve into them. It's just additional stuff that really isn't part of the class, but it's stuff that I do like to see. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, to add on to that, I've had professors give extra work for like extra credit that kind of adds on to what we're already learning, and usually it's like something pretty interesting. So that's an extra motivation.
Yeah, going off of that, I've had a couple of asynchronous classes, and I know it can be a little difficult trying to keep up with that material, especially if you're not being held accountable to reviewing that material like you know, on a daily or weekly basis. So something that really motivated me when I was taking asynchronous classes was the professors just kind of keeping tabs on the students and like having like synchronous meetings every week, even though the subject material was asynchronous. Just the teachers like checking in every week to see if the students had any questions or if they wanted to review something more. And that was something that really kept me motivated to keep learning, even if it wasn't an asynchronous format.
Yeah, I agree with Catherine. I think also during the pandemic, professors had much more availability for one on one meetings and for office hours. And I really like to utilize that in order to better get some sort of engagement, more personalized engagement with the class and with the professor.
Something also is that something reassuring was that some of the online lectures would also be like recorded afterwards. So if let's say I kind of dozed off on a spot, I could go back, listen to it again, and uh, fill in the spots in my notes that I may miss. Yep.
Okay, all great takeaways. Next question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated were you to participate in your online course? Did you have any challenges that may have caused you to not be motivated in the online course?
I could start with that. I think at first I was definitely on the lower end of the scale with motivation, especially because it was so new and it was hard to focus while you're at home and there's different devices near you that you could be using and distracted with. That was one of the challenges was staying focused.
Yeah,
I,
oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I agree with Nicole because when everything started transitioning online, it was definitely difficult to try to stay motivated because, you know, you're in the comfort of your own room and you're at home and you kind of don't want to go to class because everything's online. The lectures are recorded later on. So even if you miss it, it's not that big of a deal because you can try to catch up later. So that was definitely difficult in terms of trying to stay motivated. So in the beginning, like as Nicole said, it was definitely lower on that scale. But as things started picking up again, when professors themselves got more comfortable trying to teach material online and like trying to come up with different ways to keep their students engaged, I think that motivation just kept increasing and increasing as time went on.
So you guys are kind of referencing like pandemic time, but what about now in the current, the online classes you're taking now or the ones you recently took? Um, is that on the same? Are you still measuring that the same way on that scale?
So the asynchronous classes I'm taking right now, so I will measure it about like a 7 because since they're asynchronous and you got your own pace, it's kind of hard to like balance it with like in-person classes, where usually my in-person classes are more like tougher and I feel like requires more of my attention and time. So like asynchronous classes kind of get put on the back burner. So like you have to have like more discipline and motivation to make sure you get those asynchronous classes done and like assignments done on time. So yeah, I would give it about a 7 because there's a lot of willpower and self-discipline.
Yeah, for me personally, my motivation has increased because I've learned how to keep focused. Like, one thing I like is that now I could go to a coffee shop or go to the library and take my classes, which keeps me focused. And um, also, another thing that increases motivation is um, having asynchronous classes kind of gives you your own independent way of studying. Like, you could do whichever way you like to focus on more. If you're one of the people that don't really like to you're not really into listening to the professor and you like to look at textbook more, you could do that. And so it's more personalized.
Uh, I uh, on a scale for motivation for me, it's like a 6 or 7, mainly because the online class I'm currently taking is a 3-hour lecture that is split between uh that is split between in person and online, meaning that there is an online section, but there's also an in person section running at the same time. And for me, it feels a little uncomfortable because professors it splits the professor's time between the people in class and people online, and usually what ends up happening is the professor kind of just ignores the people online and mainly focuses the people in person. Um, and it kind of just demotivates me uh, as it went on because like I felt like I was just kind of getting ignored. Like even if you're answering, if you even if they were paying attention to chat, it just didn't feel like uh the same treatment sort of as in person versus online.
I think regarding me, for example, right? If we want to talk about, I think both eras were kind of important, right? During pandemic and post-pandemic. But for me, I kind of had the reverse experience because during the pandemic, I would say my motivation level was 2 versus now it might be an 8 or a 9. And that really has to do with environment. Back at home, I can't concentrate. I do come from a Latino family. And, sometimes when you are taking online classes, the way I was during the pandemic, a lot of that stuff can become very hard, especially when family gets integrated into the way it is in my culture. So I get a lot of distractions back at home versus now that I'm on campus and I am taking on these online courses that I can do on my own time. I have independence, but I have a good form of independence where I can do stuff on my own time and I don't have distractions. So I would say during pandemic, 2 or 3, very bad distraction level, but right now where my independence level is the way it is, I would say a 9, like, or an 8, very confident in my online courses.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to the motivation conversation? No? Okay, thank you all for sharing. Let's move on to the next category. Our next category is community building, and we're going to talk about what helps students feel connected to the instructor and their peers in online courses. So the first question is, do you find it difficult to connect with your instructor or classmates in the online course? Describe how you feel about the level of interaction with your instructor in the online course.
I think it can be hard to engage with a type of, like, online community, the way that we can't in a in-person setting. But the good thing is that a lot of our professors do engage within the material in a way where we do group presentations or we work in groups, and I think that's very beneficial because that's how we connect with online formats, through a community in these classes. So I think at the end of the day, it does make up. So I wouldn't find it as difficult as long as the class has a way to engage in community or engage with other students and other peers. So it depends. It definitely depends.
And can you describe how you feel about the level of interaction with your instructor in the online class?
Honestly, I feel like, as one of my previous peers mentioned, in online courses, professors tend to be, their office hours tend to be more open up. So if anything, I feel like on an online format, it's not very difficult. You can set up meetings with them. You have office hours, Zoom office hours. I actually enjoy that a lot. That it's one on one and it's not, you know, I really enjoy that. So I don't find that difficult either. I think it's pretty good.
I agree with Camilo because any interaction online is kind of strained. It's not the same as in person, but with the way that professors try to distribute group work, and a lot of professors do introductions where you could introduce yourself in the comments and then exchange information with other students. I think those are some skills that professors use that are really successful in helping us interact with each other. And so I think the interactions have improved. Sometimes with asynchronous, like purely asynchronous courses, it's a little more difficult as much as semi asynchronous or purely synchronous courses do.
I also have something to add in that regard. So now that I'm in grad school, a lot of the classes are, even though they're online, like they're a lot smaller. So it's a lot easier to work in groups because like you tend to know the people that you're in class with. But when I was an undergrad, um, some of the classes, like even though they were online, they would be really, really large lecture-based classes, like maybe honestly 200, 300 people. And I think in those kinds of situations, it's definitely a little more difficult to try to interact with your classmates and even the professor, because the professor would just be lecturing and trying to and them trying to take time to field questions from like 100 or so people. That can be a little difficult, and I still think that that is something that people need to find new ways to deal with, because if it's a smaller class, it's a lot easier. But if it's once it becomes like bigger and bigger and bigger, how do you transition to that sort of comfort that you feel interacting with your professors? Like that is something that I feel like should still be worked on.
Funny enough, as Catherine just described it, it's exactly my situation. Like my current online class, it's like 300 students, and honestly, I probably know none of them currently. I think it's just a mixture of like um putting a face to the name. I think in online classes, a lot of people tend to like maybe turn off their cameras or like try to like hide themselves away. And it's really hard to put a face to the name. And I know my current professor, he puts his camera like super super far back, so I can barely see his face, and it just makes that connection with that professor just a little like tougher because I don't really know how like I don't know his body language, how he like how he. mm, There's a part of like the communication where like I don't get when I don't see a person in front of me, and it's really hard to make that connection, at least for me. It's such a large class. Yeah.
Does anybody else feel like the body language and being able to see facial expressions and things close up add to the interaction?
Oh, 100%. I think mannerisms is so important for. Sorry about that. It's just ringtone. I think mannerisms are so important, and just the way my hands are moving right now, right? I think it's very important for you to bring across a point, and I think I will be controversial in the way I'm saying this, especially when it's like synchronous, like how we're doing something right now. It's so important for students to have their cameras on because I personally don't like speaking to a blank screen, and I know professors don't like it. So I really like it. I know that it's weird for me to say this when the professor forces other students to turn the cameras on because if I'm having an open discussion with you, I like to see your face and I like to be able to see what points you're trying to drive across, your perspective on things. We are humans after all. So kind of what like Kevin said, I would apply it not only to the professor, but I would also apply it to other students. I think that's just as imperative.
Yeah, I personally understand why people wouldn't want their cameras on, but it does create some sort of disconnect, especially when like 3 or 4 of the students have their camera on and then the rest don't. It kind of makes it a little awkward, and then it's not as smooth interactions, and it's more uncomfortable for the people who do have their camera on if everyone else doesn't have their camera on. So I believe that a good tactic is to make sure everyone's camera's on. Whereas also you could like take it off for a couple minutes, if you have to do something, but mostly having it on for the entirety of the class is a good skill to do.
Okay, we'll go into the next question. Describe the ways in which you were able to connect with your classmates. I know you guys talked a little bit about how you were able to build community, but describe some ways in which you were able to connect with your classmates. How often were you able to connect with your classmates online? And how beneficial were those interactions with your classmates?
I can start off with that. So definitely one of the ways that we were able to connect with our classmates online was through breakout rooms, and group work. Because without that, it's just the professor lecturing for like an hour and a half to 3 hours, because sometimes the classes would be 3 hours long. And definitely one of the ways that we could interact and, really connect with the people in the class was through those sort of group assignments. And they didn't necessarily have to be long assignments, because I had a class where a professor, it was a 3 hour class, and the professor would, like, I think every hour or so would just give us like 10 minutes to form groups or like put us in breakout rooms to kind of discuss the content of the class and like come up with any questions, or even give us a group activity to do where when we all like came back into the bigger group, we would be able to present. And that is something that really helped me stay motivated and kind of connect with my classmates better in an online environment.
And you said, how beneficial were those interactions with your classmates? How did that benefit you?
Um, I would say it benefited me a lot because, just talking to different people brings in different perspectives. So even if I'm not able to understand some of the subject material and I'm happen to be put in a group with somebody who does, it's nice to like ask them questions, ask them to see like, how do you do this problem? How do you approach trying to find this solution? So it was beneficial for me to like kind of gain different perspectives on how to do the same thing that we're all trying to achieve. So that was something that really helped me out a lot.
I agree with Catherine in that breakout groups are really effective. Another thing is when professors encourage you to make group me's. I think group me's is a great way to interact with the other people in your class and also to discuss the content of the course and to ask questions that maybe you don't want to ask the professor because you don't want to look a certain way. Yeah, so group me's, encouraging group me's, maybe even the professor like makes the group me and puts it in an announcement. I think that's a really good way to facilitate interactions.
What
Yeah,
Catherine said, sorry. Uh, what Catherine said earlier was I specifically connect with that, the breakout rooms. I think there are certain modes of interaction that are much better than others. Breakout rooms being one of them. Group me's being another one because you directly talk to each other. Something that I think would be less effective might be replying to each other's discussion boards. I don't particularly like that, but I love breakout rooms because you talk to someone one on one versus when you reply to a student, it might just be a sentence on you agreeing with them. That really isn't beneficial versus me talking to you actively. I think there's an active component to breakout rooms that helps all of us. It helps bring in new perspectives. And from a scale of 1 through 10, I think breakout rooms are a strong 10. They're amazing. I love them. Versus a group me might be that too. You know, you're talking to one another directly. If you need any help, that's very strong too. So they're definitely really good. I really liked what Catherine said earlier about breakout rooms.
for me, group me's are pretty like the best thing for me because I think I haven't had a class where it was like synchronous and we did breakout rooms because most of mine are like purely asynchronous where it's very like independent work. So sometimes interactions with classmates like probably won't happen. But if someone makes a group me, like I've met people that I didn't even know was gonna take the class, and it was really good to like help keep each other on track too, and let each other know like, oh, there's assignment coming up or feedback on how to work the class basically. So yeah, if and a group me is like part of the class, I think it helps a lot.
Uh, I don't know. Groupies are probably the most effective. I think it's just an easier way of like sort of creating that more like informal like connection, as in like you're not like robotic like I'm a student, you're a student. It's more like, oh, we're kind of friendly in this way. Like we have the same goals of succeeding in this class, so we should try to help each other out. So, oh, we have this assignment coming up. We should all know about this. Or, oh, did you think this test was a little hard? Me too. I think we should form a study group or something. Those are ways where like group me like really helps out because you're not really, it's not forced by the professor. It's more like out of student obligation to like chat and really put your foot forward.
Yeah, I do have one last thing to add about that too. One of my classes actually, I think last year or 2 years ago, for one of our online classes, our professor actually had exams and he would split us up into groups to do those exams. So it was just a group exam, like an actual midterm, where we would be allowed to work in groups of three. And these groups were randomized. And it's like, I thought it was like a great way to make new friends because I still keep in contact with my first exam group. Like, we're like best friends. We hang out all the time now, and I think that that is something that really helped. Like I was saying before, trying to get different perspectives on how to like do things, and group exams actually really, really worked. I know, like, people might say, like, "Oh, it's a group exam, so what? Are you, like, cheating off each other?" And I don't think that's the case at all because, if you're, like, actually willing to put in that work and you're actually, like, willing to talk to other people and, you know, um, working together in that assigned group, that really made that class a lot more interesting, and that really helped us actually learn the subject better because we were able to discuss and, like, talk to other people about it too. So that really helped me out.
I think that's so interesting that like I wish my professors would do that. I love that honestly because when we do leave into the working force, you are working on teams. We're not working in isolated you like just ourselves. And I think that's so beneficial that you can do group work in a way that's online, of course, or through these media formats. And yeah, I just think that's really cool. Like I would really enjoy that, and it clearly works because you're at a part um in your academic journey where the people who are in your class or you randomly are selected with are people who are also of the same caliber as you. So it's not like someone's less or more. You guys are all giving some type of information or to all of your success. So I think that's very important because just we work in groups. I don't think there's any job where you really don't work in groups.
Okay. Thank you all for your input on that. Let's go to the next question. For community building, what changes would you like to see regarding community building in online courses? In your opinion, what would make students feel more connected in the online environment?
Yeah, like what everyone said, group work is probably the best way. Um, yeah, like I had this one class where it's like uh it was completely independent. I didn't know anybody else that was taking the class. But I had another class where she puts us in groups and it was for literature and we were like discussing the book that we were reading. And I think like if I hadn't had that group, like I just learned so much more with learning other people's perspective and doing this project together and like forming like team bonding, and it was like really good just seeing other people and just being grouped together.
Anyone else want to tell us some changes you'd like to see regarding community building?
Yeah. Um, I think if you don't really have that first class where you're assigned to do group work with each other, I think it's really important to do that first class like during class time. Because if you're trying to force it outside of class, I don't think it's gonna work. Like from my experience, like it's hard to like schedule a place to meet, whether it's online or offline or like in person. When there's I don't know like 5 people and you all have different schedules and it's really hard to like put that. So just having a place where you're already there for the lecture, right? To like really work on that first group assignment and see the chemistry really helps.
Yeah, also just in general, discussion-based assignments are really helpful in engaging with your peers, I think.
So are you saying that would make students feel more connected in the online environment, Nicole?
Yes.
Anyone else want to add to our community building conversation?
I think what Catherine said earlier was very interesting about. I know that was the last question, but the exams that are group work. I think since it's high stakes and you are in a very like everyone wants to get a good grade on an exam, right? So it kind of pushes everyone to do really well in that exam. So when you're at high stakes and it's for something that usually isn't group work, everyone wants to do really well. So like in the case of Catherine, where she was able to make brand new friends, I think that's something that would be very beneficial to our online courses, that group work can be administered for high stakes assignments. It isn't only just discussion boards, 5% of our grade. It's for the 40% of our grade. It's going to push students to really build community off of that. So I think that would be the best thing for me personally.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for your comments on community building. So now we're going to move into our third and final category, which is engagement. We're going to talk about what types of engagement carry the most and the least perceived risk. So for the first question, how do you know when you are feeling engaged in an online course? What things let you know that you are actually engaged?
I can start off with this question. So, something that I really notice, and it's something that I am trying to stay away from as well, is that when online learning first started happening, is that I found myself like getting really distracted. I found myself going on my phone a lot, trying to do everything to not pay attention to class because it was really difficult in the beginning because it's a completely different format than we're used to, like you sit in so many years of in-person classes, and then when you're suddenly like transitioning online, it's like it's really difficult to stay focused. And now, post pandemic, and when people still have online classes, like I'm taking a class right now, I still find myself doing that because I'm finding it really difficult to stay engaged, and I'm finding it really difficult to kind of like not get distracted by everything around me. So something that has kind of showed me that I am staying engaged is like if I keep my camera on, if I am like participating in the group activities, if I'm like actively asking the professors questions, that's when I know that I'm like actually doing my due diligence and I'm actually sitting in class, paying attention when I'm supposed to, instead of getting distracted by everything around me. So that is something that I've just like that's really helped me out, trying to stay engaged in class.
I think I think for me, how I know if I'm feeling engaged in an online course is that if I don't constantly check the time, I feel like if I'm like, when a class is like, oh, like, this is not that interesting. I just keep checking the time. Oh, 11:30. Okay, cool. It's almost done. But like when I'm engaged in a class, time just flies. And maybe I'll still have questions afterwards that I can ask the professor. And that's when I know I'm like really engaged. It's just knowing that like, okay, I'm not focused on any other things, not even time. I'm just focusing on the material and questions that I have.
I think a lot of it has to do with the professor. Uh, that's a way that I particularly really liked is that the online classes where the professor would send an email maybe at the beginning of the week saying this is everything that you kind of have to do for this week. Uh, that would help me engage, or just making sure that the faculty member has kind of keeps an eye on us. They're constantly checking on us saying this is what you have to do. This is I know we're adults, but at the same time we are human beings and we all live very busy lives. Maybe just even getting that email saying like, hey, like this is due tonight, this is due in this day. Those constant emails, uh Canvas, all that stuff was really helpful for me. I think that was what really is important. What's the difference between it's just communication from the professor that's really important, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Constant feedback and communication from the professors really helped me stay on track and like not um like make the class like put on the back burner, which I tend to do if I'm like having more in-person classes. So um also I've had a class that was in person and went online, and something she did to keep us engaged was having like questions in the middle of the class, like using iClicker or Top Hat to she'll ask a question about what she just discussed, and then everybody answers the question on the app, or and then we'll discuss it in person. So that's she really kept us engaged with that.
One thing I would add is that I know I'm engaged when I'm utilizing all the extra resources like the office hours, and sometimes they have study sessions online with ATA. When I'm utilizing those resources, I know I'm engaged in the material. and engaged in the course and actively seeking understanding of the material.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys for those comments. We're just going to go to our third and final question on engagement. If you were teaching the course, what is the one thing you would do to make it more engaging for all students?
One thing I would do is incorporate breaks every maybe 20 or 30 minutes. Instead of lecturing for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is, instead of just lecturing, not looking at the chat, not engaging with the students in that way, and just going through the material, I think incorporating breaks or like periods of silence where you could let the students unmute and ask their own questions, I think that would really help make it more engaging. Instead of just listening to a lecture where you could probably would just sign off and think, oh, I'll listen to this later because it's not engaging.
Yeah,
I think.
sorry. I agree. I think more active work instead of like sitting at your computer and hearing a lecture for like a long time. Either they could have it like pre-recorded for the students to like listen to at their own time, and to make sure that they, engage with that lecture, they could have group sessions that are synchronous where they have to come online and do something with other students.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree with Blessing because, if a class is like asynchronous and it's difficult for students to kind of like uh, engage with the professors or like their peers in that class, like having the professor like keep tabs on the students and like encourage people to have like group discussions synchronously. I think that's a great way to um, increase that level of engagement and encourage students to do that. So if I was the professor of an asynchronous class, that is something that I would put in the work to do.
Anyone else want to add before we wrap up?
Thank you very much. This was really wonderful to hear from the students and to hear your different perspectives. So at this time, we can shift a little bit to more open questions from our attendees here. So we do have a question in the chat already, but if you have additional questions, please do put them in the chat now and I'll share them with the students. So a question that we have is, how about meeting outside of an asynchronous course in a platform like Google Docs where you can jump in and work on a collaborative document when you have time? Would that help facilitate meeting outside of class?
I think it would. That's actually something that I always try to look for on my async classes, or if they're half async, half synchronous. I do actively look for people that I have seen before. Of course, we're in the same major, so maybe we have the same background or something. I would say, hey, like let's take kind of community notes together, or let's go on Google Docs and do all this collaborative learning together. Because I won't say it like that so formally, but I think that's actually like I've done it before, and it has helped me a lot in those classes. So I think that's very beneficial. I like doing that a lot. So yeah, I have done it, and I think it's really good.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to add on to that one?
I think it depends. With asynchronous courses, it gotta have like parameters to it. Like make sure students actually feel the need to like put effort into the Google Doc, because I think that's something that could like fall through if students don't feel the like pressure, not pressure, but like well, I guess pressure to actually collaborate with the other students on something like a Google Doc, where it's not like it's on Canvas where the professor can monitor it. So yeah, that's something to look out for.
Thank you. So another question we have, as online students, do you feel there are enough online events for you to participate in to supplement your academics? If so, which factors influence if you will attend?
I think yes. There's a lot of events that do happen for all of us, especially at a university like Rutgers that's so big. There's actually always something going on. So there is a lot of online events regarding either majors, regarding either just academia, advising. There's a lot of stuff that we go to. But in regards to factors, I don't attend a lot of online events, but that's usually because I am pre-med, I do work. Um, I either try to, I have a busy family life, I have a busy social life. For right now, I'm taking 7 classes and it's my last semester. So I think it has to be intersected in a particular way where it's balances between it being an actual social event that's important for us and for it not to cross over into non-student life.
I think that's actually a great segue to the next question. Do you feel pressured to take what you believe to be more fully online courses or courses in general than you feel comfortable completing? If so, where does the pressure originate? This is from Anne Michelle Marsden. She says, I teach asynchronous courses 4 per semester. I'm consistently being told by my fully online students that they are under pressure to take too many courses. They regularly ask me for some grace on assignment due dates or just need to talk to someone about the stress.
I think for me, like when everything started going online, something that I've noticed is that or when, things started happening in person again, and now, like, the level of online classes are, like, less frequent. Something that I've noticed is that, like, oh, since it's an online class, it's not really a real class that you're taking because the structure is different and, like, the environment is different and, just the way you do things are different. So something like personally, I have definitely felt pressurized to take more classes than I am comfortable taking because, you know, it's just that sort of a mentality that you're supplementing that online class that you're taking with another like equally rigorous in-person class. I don't know where that mentality comes from, but it's just like online versus in person. You just kind of get confused, but in reality, both of those classes are, like, equally difficult.
To somewhat piggyback off that, I've I've been told, or like I've been hearing from many students, like and friends that like, yeah, like, oh, you got an online course or asynchronous, great, you don't have to do anything. When in reality, it's not that. There's still courses, right? But being taking these like async courses, you think it's gonna be easy. There's this misconception that, oh, these classes are a lot easier. You don't have to go to classes or anything, but there are still classes, and sometimes it can be harder just because you have to. It's on you to keep track of what you're doing, not the professor anymore. So sometimes there is sort of like a little pressure to like take these online courses since they are perceived to be much easier.
Thank you. So I don't think that we have time for the rest of the questions in the chat, but we can certainly share these with our panelists. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to our panelists and to Dr. Coleman for facilitating such a wonderful conversation. And thank you everyone for attending. Have a wonderful rest of the conference.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.